Hard to the Core is an achievement that scared me more than almost any other challenge I've done, and for good reason. Before I explain this challenge, I may as well briefly explain what Little Nightmares is for those that don't know. It's a horror puzzle platformer, a particularly niche genre which quickly became one of my favourites after playing this game and its sequel, Little Nightmares 2. We play as Six, a small girl trapped in some sort of huge floating iron vessel called the Maw. Throughout the game we face horrifying monsters, each in their own specific areas, worse than anything you could ever imagine. Our goal is to figure out how to get through these areas and escape from this hellscape in one piece. The challenge, Hard to the Core, requires me to make it out of the Maw in under an hour, and to top it all off, this needs to be done without dying a single time, and if you've ever played this game before, you'll know that's no easy feat. Chapter 1 starts us off in the prison. In this area, we need to make our way through some vents and large open spaces which show you how small and insignificant you are. Despite the threat level being little to none in the majority of this first area, the sound effects in the empty areas really do a great job of making you feel uneasy. You don't always need to see a monster to feel scared, sometimes it's worse when everything's left to your own imagination. It's here we get a glimpse of the monster that dwells in this area, who we'll be encountering soon enough. The next room reveals your larger than average man hanging from the ceiling, whose chair I'll be using to get through to the next room. Little details in rooms like these is one reason I love this game so much. What I mean by this is the man seems to have written a note before he died, and not only do I want to know who it's to and what it says, but it really makes me wonder how he was intelligent enough to do this, as you'll come to see most of the monsters here are a bit too, well, primitive to be able to do this, but this is just one of the many mysteries this game has that'll never be answered. Anyway, enough with the theorising, as I could honestly go on for hours about this game. The first area with an actual threat is the part with a bunch of leeches after falling through the floor, but carefully running and jumping around them is enough to get away. Now we get to see my arch nemesis, the bane of my existence. One of the reasons I was so nervous to even attempt this challenge in the first place: thin wooden planks. As you may already know, throughout this game there are multiple areas where you need to make your way across thin planks, beams and pipes, all of which are insanely easy to fall off. As far as I'm aware, this is harder using a controller, which is what I was using, as the camera angle changes every now and then, meaning I needed to change the direction I was pushing the thumbstick with every angle change, creating the perfect conditions for a fall. Most of the time I'll crawl over these slowly like a baby, but I can assure you I'd much rather be a baby than die 45 minutes in and have to start over. Here we can get a great view of this area's monster, the janitor, a nice little teaser of what we've got to look forward to in the first 2 chapters. In the kids' bedroom a few rooms later, when you first come face to face with the janitor, I actually died in one of my attempts as I attempted a speedrun strat where you run and jump past him before he has a chance to aggro onto you. As you can tell by my face, that wasn't exactly what I was expecting. By no means did I actually intend to use a speedrun strategy, as they're often high risk, low reward, but this one is so early on in the run I thought I may as well to save 30 seconds or so. Up next is a common theme in this game: hunger. Six seems to have an insatiable appetite at different points in the game, causing it to slow down significantly. There are ways of skipping these sections by intentionally tripping up in specific areas, but this wasn't something I was particularly bothered with here. Even though I have to beat the game in under an hour, time is never too tight, so taking things slow is fine for the most part, as by far the most important thing to focus on is staying alive. The rest of this area is mostly just puzzle solving to get you familiar with how the game works, and because they never caused me any problems, I'm not really going to be focusing on them. Well, even though I did say it wasn't really an issue, I did actually die basically right after this section, but normally this isn't a problem if you're careful. Right at the end of the chapter, there's a section where the camera angle changes, where you have to go down some stairs, and I honestly think that this is the place I've died most playing this game casually due to the terrible depth perception. Honestly, if you think I'm over exaggerating, just try doing this yourself and see how hard it is to walk in a straight line here. Thankfully though, I was fine with it and managed to get through the doors and through to chapter 2. This chapter is where the difficulty really starts to ramp up, as there are many more opportunities to die than in the first chapter. For now though, I need to get the key off the janitor's abnormally tall desk, which actually got me soft-locked after it got stuck in his bed. I've never had this happen before, and this wasn't the ideal place to have it happen, but I could luckily restart from the checkpoint to reset the room. Just to clarify, this doesn't affect the death count in any way. You can even go to the main menu if you're right about to die, which I think is more than fair enough if you just slipped off a pipe 30 minutes in, or you run out of stamina at a terrible moment and know you're about to die. And yeah, stamina can be a right pain in the neck, but more on that later. Apparently, Six forgot she ate literally 10 minutes ago, as she's starving again and walks right into the janitor's trap in order to have her next meal. Now we're getting really up close and personal with the janitor. After breaking through the cage Six is in and swinging through the door, I run and jump my way through the room, sticking to the cloth so he doesn't hear me. And for those that don't know, the janitor's actually blind, so he can't see me either. Because he didn't follow me into the next room, I get a bit of extra time to turn the crank and slip through the hatch before he even comes into sight. The vent I fell into leads into another monster's lair, this one being dubbed the Shoe Monster. With good movement here, you shouldn't have an issue, as you'll always have time to get to the next briefcase before being grabbed. Unfortunately, we never get to see what the monster looks like, but this game gave me enough nightmares as it is, and I don't think I need any more, so maybe that's actually a good thing. Now would be a great time to talk about stamina. As you can see, I pause for a second or two before entering the next area to gain some stamina before the chase sequence. If you run all the time, you'll see 6 stumble along slowly, which isn't ideal if you've got to run long distances without stopping. This is why managing stamina and knowing when there's going to be a chase is so important. This game scares me way too much. I don't know why I picked the scariest game I could, a speedrun. Luckily for me, the janitor can't see and ends up chasing after some gnomes instead of 6, allowing me to get under the floorboards and into the next room. Unfortunately, the break from the janitor was very short-lived, as I now have to wait for him to leave into the next room and then distract him with the simple monkeys while I climb up the dresser with ample time to get away. The vent then leads into another room with the janitor. I've no idea how he moves so fast, but there we are. He can't kill you in this room as he leaves the moment 6 enters, but he comes back in the next room when the grandfather clock falls over. This section's fine though, as there are carpets to cushion any noise I make and the clocks go off, stunning him while I make a dash down the hallway. Just like all the previous moments with the janitor, the timing's absolutely terrible as he drops right in front of me. Here, I accidentally performed a speedrun trick. You're supposed to walk on top of the bookshelf to try not to alert him, but I actually didn't know that was a safe way to do this part and just ran past. Luckily, I made it through to the next room without getting stuck. Despite the terrifying music and sound effects, there isn't any threat until you turn on the TV, even if he was chasing you before, which is pretty nice. Distracting the janitor with the TV allows me to go back the way I came with the crank needed to raise the piano to get to the next area. Like the previous crank, this one's also extremely loud, so you're on borrowed time until he catches up with you. You can get really unlucky with the way the piano swings, as it can hold you up while you wait for it to return, but I was pretty lucky here. This next room is a huge reset point for a lot of people, not because of the steam from the pipe, but just after opening the door after jumping off the cart, as there isn't any floor, so you've got to keep holding the handle for a few extra seconds. This brings us to an enclosed area where the janitor makes another attempt at grabbing 6. He can keep moving once he's grabbed the pipe, but I decide to stop for a little breather at the end of the room. If you listen to me talk about standing still before, I think you can guess where this is going. I was really dreading that part, as there isn't a safe spot in that room, and a tiny misstep is all it takes to throw you back to the start of Chapter 1 again. All I can say to those of you who want to beat this is to keep doing this fight until you beat it consistently. Make sure not to go through the vent though, as this will cause the chapter to end and you'll have to redo the whole chapter again to have another go at the fight. Now, this wasn't actually my first time beating the game, despite the trophy telling you otherwise. I spent upwards of 4 hours practicing parts of this run on a different account, which had all the chapters unlocked. If you are skilled enough to beat this on a blind playthrough, then kudos to you. With only one exception, this next chapter with the twin chefs scared me more than almost any other for several reasons. There's a particularly infamous part in this chapter where you need to run away from the chefs, but 6 sometimes takes too long to stand up and start running away, which I had a lot of trouble with when practicing. Another thing is there's basically always a threat throughout this chapter, but I could only keep practicing the same sections for so long before I realised I was procrastinating and that I just had to go for it. I did mention an exception to this being the scariest part, somewhere in chapter 4, but you'll see that soon enough. Like chapter 1, we get a not so nice view of one of the upcoming threats in this chapter. After seeing him up close, I can definitely tell you this guy looks much better from a distance. Again, it's time for Six to eat, and it's interesting to note how the food she's eating seems to be getting worse and worse, going from a lump of bread to a chunk of raw meat and now to a live rat. Now we get to properly meet the first chef. He did end up seeing me, but it's quite easy to get away from him with the tables to hide under if need be. Next, I needed to take the key from the chef's bedroom and make my way into the elevator, back to the kitchen to get through the locked door from a moment ago. Opening the elevator door before getting the key lowers the risk of me getting caught, as I don't need to waste time messing around with the lever if I'm being chased by the second chef if he sees me in the bedroom. This wasn't an issue though, as I played this part super safe, as getting away with the key before he sees you was pretty challenging and just not worth the risk. If you really wanted to save some time, you could try clipping through the door using the chef's stomach and skip this whole back and forth daily, but I think this is getting a little bit out of hand for this challenge. Getting through the kitchen the second time was fine. This time I got through undetected and made my way into the dumbwaiter. This is a nice section to take a breather, as you can't actually die here. You just need to collect some meat to make a chain of sausages, which can be used to swing through the vent. Calling the elevator in the next room brings down one of the chefs. This part may seem a little nerve-wracking, but hiding in this box makes sure he can't see you, and then he can just run past, or crawl like I did, and get into the elevator. No matter how careful you are, he always hears the elevator and chases after you, so you have to hide in the vent opening to the right and wait for him to go by. Following his incredibly thorough search, the pathway opens up and I can get through to the next room to take the key I need off the desk. There are a couple of ways to do this. Either make some noise to bait him over to you, allowing you to run away with the key and basically skip the whole room, or take the slower but safer strategy of waiting under the table and then distracting him with a meat grinder. Now at this point in the run, there was a snowflake's chance in hell I was going with option 1, but it does save some good time if you really wanted to optimise the speedrun. The chef gives you ample time to get downstairs, through the door, and through the hatch, as long as you don't miss any inputs, which I managed to pull off. This takes us to a section in the washroom with both chefs together, which luckily isn't any harder than dealing with them separately, all thanks to this table. They can't see you under it, which is a lifesaver considering they always see you when you enter the washroom. Soon enough, they go back to whatever they were doing before, letting me sneak past and push the lever. This makes the meat hooks on the ceiling move to the right instead of the left, allowing me to climb the stack of plates in front of the chef and move past into the final room of this chapter. This is the part that can easily cause you to lose your run that I mentioned at the start of this chapter. Sometimes the chef bursts through the door too quickly for you to be able to get away in time, making this by far one of the most stress-inducing parts of this challenge. Just like the janitor boss fight, practice is key. Again, it also isn't ideal that you need to practice the whole chapter to get to this point, but as long as you don't finish the chapter, you can just restart from the last checkpoint and go again. I found it more consistent to fall onto the plates and then jump off instead of falling in front of them, as it seemed like he burst through the door sooner when I did that. Despite my most feared chapter now out of the way, there was still one part of this chapter that was worrying me, this long pipe. Just kidding. Well, partly anyway. Walking in a straight line will always be my Achilles heel. Climbing up the ladder shows one of the most screenshot-worthy images I've ever seen, while also giving some info about what's going on in this place. Just ahead, you need to drop onto another pipe. Because of the funky camera angle at this part, it's actually super easy to fall off, which I've seen quite a few others struggle with too. I promise this isn't just me being bad at the game. The next 3 minutes are pretty free. The first guest that greets you gives you enough time to get away without any problems. Despite the section on top of the plates here seeming pretty tight, you can't get grabbed when swinging, and you can even jump on a hand to save swinging multiple times with no risk. Knowing me though, I'd find a way to die if I tried it here. Now here we are, the part of this challenge I was so nervous for. Okay, bane of my existence. Practiced this countless times. Should have this by now. Yes, dude. Just make sure you don't fall, otherwise I'll cry. Oh. It's not necessarily the hardest section per se, but it does pose quite a threat as it's a pretty tight squeeze between the reaching hands and can be really punishing slipping up here so far in, which can easily happen. Once you jump over this guest, the chef spots you and chases you into the bathroom. I've got to say, there aren't many people less persistent than these chefs who always give up looking for Six after a few seconds. After he leaves, he causes a can to drop, which can be used to break the bathroom's two-way mirror. And yes, you did hear that right. On the way to the elevator, we get to see the chef chopping something, and the room on the floor above shows us what's really going on here. After a little pause, I enter the next hallway. dude. I had no stamina for that whole last section. A pretty heartbreaking hunger scene not only reveals Six as a monster, but also a familiar figure in the background. If you're interested in finding out more, I'd recommend checking out the second game in this series. I do find it pretty interesting that Six has managed to eat everything without even taking off that Tengu mask. Maybe it's magic. It could also be that the developers didn't think it was an important detail to account for. Nah, I'm gonna go with magic. As Six follows the lady up the elevator, Chapter 4 draws to a close, bringing us to the 5th and final chapter. At this point, the finish line was coming into sight. I needed to sneak past the lady to break the pot on the bedside table which had the key in needed for the locked door downstairs. I find it odd that Six broke the jar without even knowing there was anything in it, and to top it off, she did it with the lady in the next room. Personally, not what I would have done, but if I was in this game, I don't think I'd have even gotten out from under the bed when the janitor came in at the start of the game. The deafening silence on the way back down is incredibly eerie, but Six is safe up until the door, which opens up into the last chase sequence. Recovering stamina and turning on the lighter really helps here, considering how dark the room is. I nearly always forget the lighter even exists at this point, as you barely need to use it past Chapter 2, but thankfully I remembered it here. The final thing left to do in this challenge was to get through this hall that reminded me all too well of my favourite room in Little Nightmares 2, grab the mirror from the table and face off against the lady. Oh, thank God. I thought I was done. I can't choke this. Yes! Oh, I did it! Oh my God! As long as I got it in the time limit. Oh my God, please, please. Please, please, please. Please. Please, just get to her. Kill her, please. Go! Go, 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 go. Hurry up, please. I don't know whether the timer stopped and I don't care. Please, I want to see that achievement so badly. I want to see it so badly. Please, say I made it in the time limit. Just go, 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 go. I just want to see the stairs. Go, 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 go. Please put me out of my misery. If I didn't do this in under an hour, I'll be so sad. But I think I did. I was so nervous that I could die in this scene. Thankfully, I don't think it's possible to die. Yes, I did it! Oh, yes! I did it! I did it! I did it quick enough! Yes! Oh. Now, let's just hope this records. Because I do not want to do this again. I mean, I think that was my third attempt at this. I'm pretty happy. I'm happy I didn't die at the janitor boss fight. I'm happy I didn't die at the chef boss fight, and I'm happy I didn't die at the table section. That would have been pretty awful. I've never been so happy to do a challenge. Well, thank you for sitting through this with me. I do really appreciate it. This was maybe not the hardest thing I've ever done, but the most nervous I've ever been for a challenge before, other than the Pantheon of Hellenist. Pantheon was something else. Although this challenge probably took years off my life, this remains one of my favourite games of all time. If you've ever beaten this game before and you found this video interesting, I definitely recommend trying this yourself, as it's a lot of fun despite how stressful it can be. And thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, consider leaving a like, or maybe even subscribing to my channel if you want to see more like this. Have a good one.